Welcome to Pathways to Aviation and our Career Symposium. It's day 2. We opened the day with job announcements with our friends at JS Firm, and now we're moving right into our career panel. This is the heart of our week, are these career panels, and today we're focusing on aircraft maintenance. And it's all part of a week-long celebration of aviation careers. Pathways to Aviation, our whole thrust, our mission is to inform, inspire, and engage aviation's next generation. And we do that a number of ways. We host weekly workshops, mostly on career planning. We have designed a career readiness certification program for high school and college students and job seekers to guide themselves, and we help guide them through a spectrum of steps so that they are ready to be successful in the job interview. As they're doing that, we introduce them to industry leaders who may be looking to provide mentorship, but also those who may be looking to hire immediately or create pools of potential future hires. And when we say future, this could be 6 months, 2 years, even up to 8 years in the future. As we're working even with some high school freshmen, they may not be ready for the workplace for another 8 years, but getting them connected to industry leaders now is an optimal time. So we have assembled a great panel of industry leaders for this particular session. And rather than have Eric and I lead the show as we do all the time, we have recruited whom we believe is the finest moderator on the planet. So Greg Meisinger, it's in your hands. Take it from here.
All right, I was born for this. I love it. Thanks for having me. First of all, thank you to Pete, Eric, all the panelists that are here, and then most importantly, thank you to everybody else who's joined in. What a great opportunity to be able to get together, especially in today's world, and have some, transfer of information. This is awesome. I'm really excited. I got involved with Pathways specifically because I didn't have something like this when I was younger, and I think it's such a cool thing. And Pete and Eric have done a great job with this. I also think it's kind of a sick joke that they asked me to moderate this because this is the aircraft maintenance career panel, and I am a pilot, the worst kind of pilot, the pilot who knows how to break the airplanes. I have absolutely no idea how to fix them. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll hand it over here to the panelists in just a bit. They're going to be the real show, but just a little bit about myself. My name's Greg. I grew up just north of Philadelphia. Knew I wanted to be a pilot since I was a little kid, which was kind of lucky for me there. And I ended up joining the U.S. Navy and got my dream job flying fighters. So I was a F-18 pilot while I was active duty for 12 years. While I was doing that, I got to instruct in a variety of different airplanes, to include the F-16 and the F-5 towards the tail end of my time as I was a part of the Top Gun program out in Fallon, Nevada. From there, I decided to kind of stay part-time. I got out of active duty. I'm still a reservist. I fly the F-5. If anyone knows Air Force aircraft a little better, that looks a lot like the T-38. And I fly that in an adversary role. So I play the bad guy for the blue air, if you will, to go ahead and train against. And then I started my career in the airlines. I felt really lucky to get picked up by American Airlines. I currently fly the Airbus. I'm LAX based, and I've had a lot of fun doing that for the last couple of years. Obviously, unprecedented times right now. So I've taken every day as a learning opportunity to see what this career and this industry is really like. So again, excited to be here and learn a little bit more about the industry that I'm involved in as time goes on. So that's enough about myself. Again, we're here for aircraft maintenance careers, and we got 3 great panelists that we can talk to. I'm sure they have a lot of great information. And I just want to remind everybody that if you have any questions, please put those into the chat, and then I will endeavor to go ahead and read those, make sure we can ask those questions either to the panel or to specific individuals. And if I don't do that, I know Eric's got my back, and he'll go ahead and let me know that we got some questions rolling in. So with that, I'll introduce our first panelist. His name is Sean Galligan. And Sean, I'll go ahead and kick it over to you.
All right, excellent. Thanks a lot, Greg, for introducing myself. Again, my name is Sean Galligan. I am currently the CEO of a company called Aviation Workforce Solutions, which has been started up for just about a year. But before that, I've spent 30 years in public education. In that last decade, I was involved in aviation maintenance. I oversaw 2 Part 147 schools. And with that, I saw the opportunity that students that came through the schools had as a career. Matter of fact, as a director of those 2 programs, I saw how successful students were, and enrolled both of my kids, both boys, into that program. And both of my boys are now A&P technicians, or with their certificates. However, to be an A&P doesn't always have to be your last stop in a career. Both of my boys, got their A&Ps, but both of them continued on. They got their associate's degrees, and they've continued on. One with a bachelor's degree in supply chain management and is now in charge of supply chain for a turbine engine company. And my younger son is, I'm hoping this term, graduating with mechanical engineering. So if you've got your A&P, it's not the last thing you may be doing. It may just be the start for something else. And I think that is a really important thing as you think about your career. Your career is just not 1 year. It's not 2 years. A career is a lifetime. And an A&P is one of those type of certificates, one of those things that you earn in life that can pay dividends for the rest of your life. For me, it's great. I know that when my boys got their A&Ps, I knew that they could take care of themselves. They could take care of their families for the rest of their life. That meant I didn't have to. So that was kind of a good thing for me, knowing that my kids are now self-contained. So I'm very proud of those. And I encourage students that are going into maintenance to always look a little farther than just getting your A&P. Always think about getting that degree, getting that other additional certification, and going that route. After the 30 years of working in public education and running the 147s and a flight school and some other things, I retired. However, when I retired, I didn't retire. I loved aviation too much to leave. And what I did see is I still had I've had thousands of students come through my fingers in those schools, and they still reach out to me. They said, man, how about this? Or how about this company? Or can you help me with this? I said, you know what? This is what I've been doing for 30 years. So I decided I want to continue doing that. So I started up a small one-man shop. Actually, it's more of a hobby type job because I love getting up every day. I get on my emails, I run into students, I'm on LinkedIn, I have students contact me, I have people now from all over the world calling and asking, well, not calling, but a lot of emails, set up Zoom meetings and said, how do I do this? How do I get here? And there's a lot of options for students now, for people that are in industry. With that, I set up a website that helps out different companies that I work with, as well as people that are in industry trying to hook up with those jobs. And there's plenty of opportunity out there. We keep on hearing about all the furloughs and the bad news, but there is a lot of good news out there. There's literally hundreds of companies that are out there hiring. And I mean, on my site are the ones that I deal with. I've got almost 200 companies that are looking for almost 400 aviation technicians right now. They can't find them. They're not available to them. Now, some of the good things that I can kind of recommend to you as you start looking towards that is make sure that you get your A&P. Not just complete the program, but literally take those exams. There's a set of exams called an airframe, an oral, a practical, and your written exams. I cannot tell you, do not delay. Get those immediately. The more time you delay, the less likely you'll get those certificates. You've got to get those certificates. 2, there's always ongoing training that you can get. The FAA has a number of free training that you can get and build your resume. Your resume is really important. And when you graduate from an A&P school, you're not going to have a lot of experience. And you'll see a lot of companies say, we just want you with you have experience. No, then they want to pass you on. So you got to come up with that extra piece. And there's a lot of extra training that you can get. Pathways to Aviation has training. FAA has additional training. There's a lot of training out there that is zero to no or little cost that will build that resume so that when you do go talk to those employers or those recruiters, you've got something more to say than I just got that A&P. When you're in industry, it's very important also just to continue building yourself, making sure that you're keeping up with your training records, making sure that you're keeping up with all the what's going on in industry. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity for you getting into this. There's going to be the opportunity in the future will even be greater. Although right now we're in a little bit of a lull with the hiring, there is still going to be a huge shortage of technicians over the next couple of decades. The number of people that are retiring out, the people that are aging out, just the change in the workforce is going to create an opportunity for the people coming in now to have a very strong opportunity for a lifetime going forward. I believe that takes about my time, Greg. Back to you.
Hey, thanks, Sean. I really appreciate it. I 100% agree with you on the going forward piece. You know, the times may be rough in a few sectors here, but it's always going to rebound. And I think an important thing you kind of hit on with the A&P stuff, especially, is diversification of your skills. I know on a lot of the applications I put out there after I was finished with the military, they asked if I had, it was for a pilot spot, but they asked if I had an A&P. And I've got some friends who do, and they've been snapped up in a heartbeat, especially by some of these smaller corporations who need to kind of have an efficient workforce. Not only are they flying the airplanes, but they can fix them too. And they were very, very well sought after. So I was kind of jealous of that. That was cool. And you also mentioned wanting to get back into aviation. Just, it's such a, I've never met anyone who left aviation and said, "Now I'm good and I don't want to go back." So it's good to hear that.
Yeah, I'm a pilot as well. I'm a pilot as well, so the smell of jet fuel in the morning is fantastic.
Oh, I love it.
Another one, if you're ex-military, if anyone's out there that's ex-military getting this, and you got secret clearance, that is gold for a lot of companies. I see lots and lots of companies looking for people with that secret clearance eligibility. Either they have it or they're eligible for it.
Yep, and again, I think diversification of those skills is huge. So thanks again, Sean. I'll introduce our next panelist here, Ryan Gertzen. Go ahead, Ryan.
Hey, thanks, Greg. Thanks a lot, everyone, and thanks to the entire Pathways to Aviation team. I mean, this is an amazing a forum to really, talk about aviation-based careers, and I think for me, I am so passionate about creating, pipelines to aviation, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but as we go along. But for a lot of you, I know, either you've never had family members in aviation, you maybe don't know how to navigate this awesome world of aviation. And I just want you to know that I didn't either. I grew up in a town of 900 in Henderson, Nebraska, and I only knew how to raise corn. Nobody in my family who was in aviation. I didn't have mentors or organizations like, Pathways to Aviation to kind of lead me down this path. And so I had to try to figure it out on my own. And sometimes when you're doing that, you make some good decisions, and sometimes you make some not so good decisions. And so, definitely, I think the big key is to lean on people and ask. There's never a bad question out there. And so for me, I had to figure out, okay, I knew I didn't like farming. And I knew that when I went irrigating with my dad, there was an ag operator that was about a quarter mile from our house. And that always looked like a lot more fun. They taking off in the morning at 5 o'clock and then me going and irrigating corn. That just seemed like a much better profession to me. And so I can't help, Becky Ludi, I noticed you're on the phone there, and Becky was actually one of my instructors in college, believe it or not, at the University of Nebraska at Omaha. And that's where I found myself. I started as Greg as a pilot, and I actually got my private pilot's license in high school, and went to the University of Nebraska at Omaha and did all of my ratings there. I got my master's degree from the University of Nebraska. And then I went to work for Air Wisconsin Airlines, which is a regional flying out of Appleton, Wisconsin. And by the way, I think this is another key. In aviation, just take the job. Take your first job, right? I'd never been to Appleton before. I'd never been to Wisconsin before, accepting, that first appointment with Air Wisconsin. And so it really led me down a path, that I never even imagined, because I ended up, you're going to have adversity in life, and all of us experience adversity to one degree or another. And the key is how do you respond to that adversity? And for me, I woke up one day and I couldn't fly airplanes again. And for me, I really didn't want to do anything but fly airplanes. And so I had to really quickly decide, am I going to let that bad situation, live out the rest of my life in that bad situation, or was I going to, embrace a new direction? And for me, it got me into aviation maintenance. I became the training director at the airline. I ended up running their Aviation Safety Action Program, their ASAP program. I then went to a maintenance, repair, and overhaul center in Oklahoma City, AAR, which is where I'm at today. I'm at my second stint at AAR. But then I went to I kind of took a hiatus, as Sean said, into higher education. And I spent 8 years as the president of Spartan College of Aeronautics and Technology. I had never really understood higher education, which is a completely different world than the aviation is from the standpoint of just regulatorily speaking. But it's what really drove the passion that I have. And for me, I'm all about aviation because it changes lives. This is a six-figure career for people. And you want generational change, choose aviation. And for me, I saw it in my college every day. I saw first-time college goers. I saw people who never thought they could amount to anything in life. And I saw them come into the school and really transform themselves, and then and really transform their lives, and ultimately the lives of their kids, and then ultimately their kids, and so on. And so for me, that's my passion. It's what gets me up every day. And it's why after I left Spartan, I came to AAR for the second time as their vice president of maintenance workforce development. AAR Corp, you may not know by name, but you would definitely know our customers. Our customers are Southwest Airlines, United, Delta, Alaska, many of the regional airlines, the United States Navy, the United States Marine Corps, the United States Air Force. They're all customers that AAR has. We are a global aerospace company in Chicago, Illinois. We have about 3,500 technicians that work for us in our maintenance, repair, and overhaul centers. And we overhaul commercial airplanes as a big section of our business. We do about 1,000 airplanes a year, almost a little over 5.5 million man hours of work go on these airplanes each year out of our facilities. And as Sean said, I just saw the Boeing report just got published for the 2020. The Boeing report says 739,000 technicians are needed globally, 193,000 of them in North America alone. And as Sean said, I actually work very closely with Sean at his schools because we had a big facility in Miami, Florida, where he was a big advocate of AAR. We spent a lot of time, talking to his students and talking about that career, which aviation is. One thing I want to end with is just understanding a couple of things. I said one thing, just take the job, right? It may not be in the location you want, but aviation will take you around the world if you want it to. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing is it's a small community of people, and you want to always be putting your best foot forward, and always asking, right? Don't try to navigate it by yourself. There's so many organizations that are there to help. Pathways to Aviation being one just remarkable organization that helps people navigate. But I think the other thing is when I look at the pathway, keep in mind that you may start your career as a pilot. You may start it as an aviation maintenance technician. I never would have thought I would have been a president of a school. I never would have thought I would have been in maintenance over being a pilot. My God, help us. I would never have thought that, right? And I think the key today is in my current role, it's about opening up aviation to a diverse population. We're doing tremendous outreach into the people of color, which represents a fairly small population. Less than 10% of aviation is aviation maintenance is people of color. We're trying to change that. I'm working closely with Becky in a really cool project down in Florida where we're hiring female technicians. We need more than 2.4% of the population to be female technicians. And so there's just tremendous opportunities that we're trying to provide in funneling folks who never thought aviation was possible. Let me tell you, it is possible for you. If you're thinking, I don't know if I'm smart enough, I don't know if I know how to do this, trust me, everybody's felt that way one time or another. And the key is just take the job, choose aviation. And finally, one of the things that we're doing at AAR is really understanding that your career may start as a technician. You may grow as a technician into leadership roles, operational roles, quality control roles, safety roles, inspection roles. There's all kinds of different careers, along that pathway spectrum. So, just excited to be able to be a resource to Pathways to Aviation, and really looking forward to, hopefully seeing some of you come to AAR in the very near future. So with that, Greg, I'll turn it back over to you.
Hey, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. I've thought this a lot, and you reiterated it as I've gone through my career, the take the job mentality, mostly because you never know what you're going to fall in love with. There's parts of flying, specifically the building training syllabi that I've gotten involved in, that I've enjoyed. I don't want to say more than getting in the airplane, but almost just as much, and it's brought just as much reward. And as a student, when I first started flight school, if you were to tell me that I was going to be the guy that would enjoy making the syllabus, right, I would have said you were crazy, and I would never have taken the job, if you will. So I really like that mentality. Hey, be flexible, take the job, and see what happens, because aviation is such a varied industry. Who knows what you're going to end up actually falling in love with 5 years, 10 years, 25 years down the road. And then, what I've noticed that the aviation industry is good about is the faucet's either full on or it's full off. So at times you don't see a good opportunity in a certain sector you're excited about. Take the job you can, because guess what? A year down the road, maybe all of a sudden they need 10 times more people than they realized. And now the faucet's back on again, and you can hop into that role that you had originally wanted previously, but now with more experience. So anyway, I really appreciate that. Thanks for some of that insight. And I also recognize you use the word pipeline to aviation. I think that's because you're in Texas and you're an oil guy, maybe. I don't know.
It's got to be. It must be pipelining. That's great, Greg. I love it.
All right. Well, thanks again, Ryan. I'll introduce our third panelist here, Kendall Fult. Kendall, I'll kick it over to you.
Well, thanks. Thank you for letting me join today, and thank you for all of you that have joined. Kendall Folge. I currently work for Duncan Aviation, and just a little bit about me. First, let me tell you thank you to all you veterans that are out there, especially you Navy guys. I'm a retired Navy airframe guy, and I worked on P-3s and F-14s. But remember, when I joined the Navy, I knew nothing about aviation, and that's why I joined the Navy to see the world. And then they gave me a job, and I somehow fumbled into aviation, which worked out really well for me. And so from there, I spent the next 22 years working on airplanes and moving up. And fortunately for me, I moved really quick, so I didn't get to spend as much time as to become a really good technician. Not a bad technician, but not a really good one. Probably a pretty good manager. And then I wound up recruiting at the end of the Navy, and I left, and I really thought, I'd had enough of aviation, I'll move on. Well, like most veterans, it took me about 7 jobs to finally come back to aviation. And I came back and I went into the commercial world of aviation, and I worked for a little commuter airline. And like Ryan said, I took the job. And most people would say, there's no way that you would take a job I was a line guy, a fueler, and I cleaned airplanes because I didn't have an A&P. So back to what Pete said, and I think Sean said too, get that A&P and get that last part of it. Many of you go to school and then fail to get that testing. So if you're going to do that, you probably want to, but they used me in certain roles, and I moved around in that company because they saw my potential, and then I wound up being their safety guy, which I loved and I hated, just so you know, because it's a tough role. And then I had a personal friend who I met in the Navy, and he was here at Duncan Aviation, and I rolled back over here as well, first I came here in 1998 for 6 months and found out I wasn't a technician and left. And then I came back in 2005 as the safety guy here, and I worked 9 years in safety. Then I moved from safety, I moved into training, spent 4 years in training. And then the company realized they needed to spread out a little better and look at our veterans and see if we could hire more veterans. Although I'm very proud that 25% of our population is veterans. We got about a little over 600 of them. And so I sort of specialize in that part because, again, as a retiree, I can go to any military installation in the world, and I do that. And I still speak that lingo. I still understand their circumstances because you can go somewhere and work for 20 years and then you come to another company and it's like night and day. And so it can be a struggle. A lot of them don't think, things will cross translate or they'll work out. And believe it or not, they really do work out well. I mean, honestly. And I would tell you that what really gets me here is this is a family-owned company that has been family-owned for 64 years. We're on our fourth generation. So the two youngest guys, Harrison and PK, Harrison is in our administrative side and PK actually got an A&P. His dad, Todd, jokes all the time that they're all pilots, but only PK can fix the airplane. So yeah, there is some being dual qualified can help you a lot, believe it or not, because you can work on both. You can actually fly it, but you can actually change a tire, and it's not that hard, but you got to be certified to change that tire. And so I would tell you here, the big thing for us is that we want people to come here that are first, that have a great attitude. I mean, attitude is everything. And I can't say it enough to Ryan. I work with people when I recruit, I get on there and I look and I tell them, I call them on the phone and say, you may not fit in this role, but I think you fit over here. Would you take this job if we offered it? You'd be surprised what success we've had with that, where people have decided that, hey, maybe I'm not an engine guy, but I could work in your accessory shop. So one of the things we're trying to do is figure out what really fits best for the people that apply for us. And then I can't tell you enough that the world is open to you. You got to come in here and like me, I've moved into my third role in the company in 15 years. So it doesn't mean because you come here as an A&P or as you come here, we have parts runners. We have an actual parts runner started at 18 and he's now the manager of our satellites. And he's been the manager out there for about 15 years. So the opportunity to grow is all up to you. I mean, you've got to go out there and do that. And I would say one of the coolest thing about us, because of what we do here, we work on so many different type models of aircraft, and we have service contracts to where we're required to send people to certain schoolings, but we also give people the opportunity to go to different schoolings as well, so they can broaden their skills. Because again, the big thing for you is to be able to do a lot of things and do them well. And then in turn, you can actually have a great career in aviation, because it's probably, no matter what, people always, they come here to you were to come here to Lincoln, Nebraska, that's where I'm at, is in Lincoln. And we have a facility in Battle Creek, Michigan. We have a facility in Provo, Utah. And when you walk into our facilities, the first thing people say, as soon as they walk in, they're wowed by the airplanes. And then they look around and go, does anybody work here? We've never seen a place this clean. I mean, we pride ourselves on how we take care of our facilities. So that's what we look at, is we know we're a great company and we are always looking for great people. But again, I would just tell you, do all you can to educate yourself. Ask. Don't be afraid to say, hey, can I go to this school? Can I go to that? I actually, because we were so small in Provo, I had to actually send one engine guy to 4 different Rolls-Royce schools. Do you think we want to lose that guy? Never. And the opportunity he got and what he can do for us, and he is still with us, thank goodness. So, again, the opportunity is there for you. So I tell you, all you got to do is just get in there and have a great attitude, ask, and you can be successful, because I'm living proof, and I know other people can do exactly what I did. So that's about it for me.
Awesome. Thanks, Kendall. Something we've talked about in previous workshops over the course of the years has definitely been the attitude as you come into any situation, and also being, for lack of a better word, vocal about what you want. So a lot of times people just don't ask the question, do you have XYZ available? Or I'm applying for the job, I'm not, maybe you can't, or you don't need to hire me for that particular role. But like you said, I've got this idea of another role that we could easily use you in. So again, this kind of, I guess, goes to the diversification piece, especially in the aviation industry, keeps you necessary, if you will, especially like this guy, I guess, who's gone to 4 different schools. You're not going to let him go and he's going to get scooped up in a heartbeat. So And I also like the kind of speaking the same language thing. You know, you were a safety guy, and sometimes safety comes into the room and you kind of give them a second look, like, should I be talking to this guy? Should I not be talking to this guy? But you know, maybe you were a safety guy and now you're on a different side of the table, but you're speaking the same language as everybody else at the table, and that fosters some pretty great relationships, I'm sure. So
Absolutely.
So, well, again, thanks, Kendall. Thank you to all of our panelists for kind of introducing, giving us an overall overview of what you do and how you got to where you are. I'll just start, I guess we'll start at the top. We'll go Sean, Ryan, and then Kendall. Just quick question. Are there any apprenticeships or internships that you guys are currently offering or offer over time at your respective companies?
Not directly with me, but I know that Ryan's got some stuff to speak about on this. I'm sure his AAR has been a very, very big proponent of apprenticeships for students. There's big movement in Florida for apprenticeship programs. The government, the state is promoting apprenticeships across, and there's 3 or 4 large ones of those. I don't know of any of the other ones, maybe nationally. I want to just pass it to Ryan real quick because I know that he has more on this with AAR and the Eagle program, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, perfect. So yeah, for us, 2018, we launched AAR's Eagle Career Pathway Program, and we have 7 colleges and universities that are a part of the program. But the pathway really extends beyond just your traditional airframe and power plant programs. We've created skill bridge programs of the United States military, in which we have 4 programs running right now in various bases where they're taking part of the really cool skill bridge program. And then we also have aviation sheet metal programs that we've either started in high school or at a really good example of that is South Chicago at Olive Harvey. And in 60 days of training, these folks are meeting our entry-level requirements for sheet metal repair. And then we put them into our apprenticeship program, what we call step-level progression. And over an 18-month period of time, we help to get, they work towards and document their experience on the job, and then we can help them get their airframe certificate after 18 months. So this is zero going to school. You can literally go through one of these pathway programs and ultimately get certificated. So we do have openings in multiple, even though as Sean said, that it sounds doom and gloom right now, but we are actually hiring in our Rockford facility, in our Miami facility, and we'll probably soon be hiring in our Oklahoma City facility. So there is a need even now for people to choose aviation. So a little bit about AAR at least.
And at Duncan Aviation, we have recently started our own airframe and power plant school. We got it accredited, and so we have recently started that. And our first power plant course, we actually only took in-house technicians because we do, while some may not, but we do hire people that don't have an AMP. They can come here as a helper, and then we put them into programs so they can get enough time, because again, you got to document that time so you can get an 8610, so you can test with FAA and things. And then with our airframe, we are supposed to, mid-October, we should start. We already have guys going through it, but we're going to start a class in January, and mid-October, we should start taking applications. And so those guys, that's a full-time paid job. So you come here and you work on the floor, and then for a couple hours each day, you'll go and sit into a classroom and have classroom instructions, and we offer them in Lincoln, Battle Creek, and Provo. The main hub here in Lincoln is where our school is, and then the guys in Battle Creek and Provo, and gals, excuse me, that will actually do a virtual with the classroom portion of it. But the program's 2 years long, and we're doing our best to help grow our own AMPs, hopefully.
And if I could, I think it really, Kenneth, you hit a good point. I mean, keep in mind that the aviation industry was in crisis prior to COVID-19 from a workforce perspective. And a lot of what Kenneth is talking about are companies that have taken it upon themselves because the feed of technicians just wasn't there out of the 181 AMP schools in the country. And so companies were having to be very innovative in their approach to create, local talent. And so, I think companies like Duncan and like AAR have really invested in the infrastructure required to really grow the talent from within and really meet their own, employee requirements from a workload perspective. So it's definitely something that I think is something we need to keep in mind. And if I'm sitting there as a student going, do I decide to get in aviation or not, right? There is no better time than now to choose to go into an aviation maintenance program or school, because you're talking about, in most cases, those schools are between 12 and 24 months in length, and aviation is going to look a lot different 24 months from now. And it's definitely something that that we're promoting, and we see that crisis is going to return, and I think it's probably going to be worse than it was in February.
I know, I certainly kind of hope so.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you guys all kind of answered this next question a little bit in your answers there, but in general, how many, in terms of either hours, months, or years, whatever's a best unit of measure, have you seen as the average amount of time to essentially get that A&P license if you're working kind of as an apprentice or an intern in that entry level, if you will, position? What's, general timelines? Sean, we'll just start with you, I guess.
From speaking, if they go to an FAA Part 147 school and go through a FAA curriculum program, you're looking at roughly 1,900 hours. That's probably a minimum. That is equal to about 18 months. They'll take general curriculum first, and then they'll do an airframe or power plant and vice versa, and then they'll take their exams. That is typically it's a full-time program. So you're going to school Monday through Friday, 5 hours a day for 18 months. It is a lot of hands-on projects, and that's a great thing about being in an aviation program. You're not sitting just reading books all day. You're going to have the theory, but it's hands-on. You literally will take apart motors. You'll take apart engines. You'll run engines. You'll do electronics. You'll jack up aircraft. You'll take apart wings. So if you're a hands-on type of learner, this is a perfect type of career for you. But it's a long day, typically. And if you're doing a job, you've got to work and do this, it does make for a long, long day, and you really enjoy your weekends. Another thing, currently the way the schools are operating, it's very time sensitive, in which they literally measure the minutes in which you are in class. So if you're a person that can't show up on time, can't show up to a job on time, and you got to leave early from work, figure it that way. This may not be the best course of action for you as a program, just because like the expectations are when you go to work is that you show up on time and you stay your full day. The same thing is for school. You show up on time, be there, and you don't leave until the very end. Very time sensitive, and the cost to make up time can be extremely expensive for you in lost time.
Got it. Thanks, Sean. Ryan, Kendall, those timelines seem about the same for what you guys have seen as well?
Oh yeah, for us.
Yeah, no, I think, there's really three pathways to certification. Sean talked about an A&P school. There's 181 schools in the country that you can choose from that are FAA certificated. You could come out of the Marine or the military as a technician. And you can also use experience in the Part 65 of the regulations, Federal Aviation Administration regulations. Part 65 states that if you're going to go for a single license, like an airframe or power plant, it's a minimum of 18 months of experience. If you're going to do both, it's 30 months of experience, in which it has to be documented, and you have to take that experience to the local flight standard district's office and really and get them to sign off on it. But I think I might, and I know Kenneth would appreciate this because he's a safety guy, but I think one of the things that Sean really talked about is, one of the things that, he talked about time and the needing to show up to be, from an attendance perspective. I I always liked Denny Fitch. Denny Fitch was the captain on United 232 that crashed in Sioux City, Iowa, and he manipulated the thrust levers to get the airplane, you know, in a miracle, right, to get it to at least to the Sioux City airport, to the closed runway. And he said, you know, your attitude determines your altitude, and if you think you can't, you won't. And I really, when I look at, you know, aviation, you know, it's part of the schooling is technical, but the bigger part of it is creating that good corporate citizen and that person that understands safety, and that the lives are on the line by what you do or not do, and whether or not you follow the rules or you don't follow the rules. And so, you know, it's not by happenstance that aviation is the safest mode of transportation in the world by far, commercial aviation, I should say. You know, your chances of dying on a commercial airplane are 1 in 25,000 years. You could fly, that's what they say statistically. You could fly an airplane every day for 25,000 years, and you may not be in an accident. And so, but the way that happened is because of accidents, you know, and you look at the past, and I think a lot of times for young people, because airplanes don't crash like they used to, you don't realize how the regulations were written and the accidents that brought about the safety of our industry the way that it has. And the biggest part of that safety is this ability to tell on yourself when you did something wrong, you know. And the FAA has really pushed voluntary disclosure programs to make the industry more preventative versus reactionary. And so I would say, you know, what Sean said is very, very critical. Integrity and responsibility are paramount to aviation-based careers.
Yeah, I love it, Ryan. Thank you so much. I have felt a responsibility certainly as a pilot, and then that extends to the fact that I just trust the airplane I'm flying, and then the passengers in the back, they've got so many levels of trust they need to go through, and I'm glad that we built that trust over so many years of solid and safe operations. This next question comes from the A&P class at Clover Park Technical College. And Ryan, I think I'll ask you first, just because you know, you kind of bridged a few different departments at a regional airline, and then open it up to Sean and Kendall. But for students that are finishing in the next year or so, and they want to end up at a place like SkyWest or a Delta or another large carrier, what advice do you guys have to, you know, eventually get into those companies, or, you know, what's the best stepping stone in order to work your way that direction?
Well, for me, first and foremost, Sean said at the very beginning, you have to get your A&P. Don't go to school and then graduate and then not take the tests, right? You have to get it, because you automatically cap your ability to grow as a professional, right? If you don't get your A&P, you'll never be a GM making $200,000 a year. You'll never be a director of maintenance. You'll never be a chief inspector. You'll never be a lead, right? You have to have the A&P. You know, in a case like a regional airline, you might be able to go directly from your school to the regional airline. You're never going to go from your school typically to Delta or American, for example. They usually require 3 to 5 years of heavy jet experience. And that's where a company like we come in at AAR. We have major air carriers as our customers, and there's no better way to get experience than in a maintenance, repair, and overhaul center, because you have tremendous repetition of airplanes coming in and out every single day. And it allows you to really broaden and really understand the airplane from a level of maintenance that you typically don't get in a line maintenance operation. And we lose about 20–25% of our workforce to the major air carriers every year, because they come to us and they want that skill set technician to transition to them. So I would really encourage that entire class, get your A&P first and foremost, and then look at whether or not, you know, the regionals might be hiring. And if they're not, look to a HACO, look to an AAR, look to an ATS, look to you know, some of those major repair and overhaul centers. Duncan, oh my God, you don't have to just be in commercial. You could go business route and then go commercial later. So those airplanes are probably more complicated actually at Duncan than they are on the commercial airline side. So that would be definitely my advice.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Sean, Kendall, anything to add to that?
Yeah, the one thing is that you'll see, like, you got to be willing to relocate. Typically, if you're trying to hit some of the majors or some of those, you're probably going to end up someplace cold. You're going to end up someplace where, they have a hard time staffing because of, location. So you're going to have to be able to, suck it up and take the job, as Ryan has already alluded to. But that's going to be really kind of important for some of these places, because they're trying to staff places, that they can't staff. Not a good thing is you get in with a company, you spend time with that company. I can tell you, I've seen a number of resumes where a person's been at this MRO for 3 months, this one for 4 months, the next one for 3 months. What's that say about your work ethic? If you're going to end up at Duncan, stay there for, a couple of years. If your goal is to hit the majors, don't sit there and just go there for 6 months or a year and get out. First of all, Duncan's a great company. AAR is a great company. There's a lot of great companies. You may actually find out that, the majors sounded really super cool, but at the end of the day, there's people that are lifelongers at AAR, at Duncan, at F&E, at HICO. You may be really surprised to find out where your heart will lead you to. Yeah, make sure you're willing to do that relocation. I think that's all I have right now on that one.
Awesome. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. I'll throw out one more kind of big general question. We'll have all you guys answer that. And then Kendall, if you want to chime in on any advice as well, give you a chance to kind of tail onto that last question. And I'm sure this is the question everybody wants to know the answer to. Please just ballpark the number. You don't have to give us exact figures. In the age of COVID-19, we're all looking to get hired. We all want to start working. In general, what does some of the salaries look like for these entry-level positions that people that are basically graduating now or getting their A&P now can expect? And in that same kind of realm, as we're talking about salaries, have you guys seen any large changes in the hiring process just due to COVID-19, or maybe some of these hiring processes that are may change going into the future because of what we've seen recently with COVID-19? Kendall, I'll start with you for this. Okay,
I would tell you, straight out of school, most of the time you're looking at an average of $20 an hour with us. It also depends on your experience, because we have some veterans who go and get their A&P and then they've already worked airplanes. So it all depends on their manager, the hiring manager, deciding. But if you're straight out of school coming to one of our locations, probably going to start around $20 an hour. And I'm trying to remember the other part there you were talking.
Have you seen any large changes in your hiring process that may stay because of COVID?
I will tell you that I've seen, because, we take care of, when you look at the map and you look at Duncan Aviation's website, we have 29 what we call satellite avionics shops and all over the country. We had an opening in Seattle for an avionics technician, but we want someone with 3 to 5 years of business jet experience working on like cabinet entertainment systems, Wi-Fi, and I will tell you, we had 85 people apply, and the majority of them came from Boeing. So what we're seeing is some of these corporations are laying people off, and now they're coming to us. I've actually seen, the only thing I've seen is I've seen more people applying to our open jobs than I've ever seen. I mean, we've always had good numbers, but now they're getting really a lot of numbers, which in turns makes sometimes our hiring managers get a little more picky about who they hire. I mean, and I understand that, but I'm a guy who says, let's give that young guy or gal who's just starting off a chance and see what happens. Because, I mean, again, I can tell you for this company, we have a thing called Silver Wings, and we have over 370 people that have been here for 25 years or more. So I know the opportunity when people come, especially if they want to be in the regions we're at, they tend to stay.
Got it. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, a huge plus, I think, to some people just applying coming out of their schooling is that the fact that they're going to stick around. They're not just finding a job for right now. So that's actually a huge benefit for some of these graduates, recent graduates, if you will. Ryan, ballpark salaries, hiring process changes that you've seen?
Yeah, I mean, we're very close, kind of in that $20 an hour. If you're uncertificated, it might be as low as 16, goes up to probably as high as in the 30s. We are, and that's all based upon experience. So there's this wide range, and it also varies a little bit by location. To live in Miami costs more than living in Oklahoma City or Rockford, for example. So there is some of that goes on. I would also just say, as a student, either in high school or in school, it's easy to make a wrong decision, right? And, whether it's a DWI or whether it's, drugs or whatever, right? Those are important because, for us, we have, criminal background checks that required. We have drug testing and random drug testing that's required. So those are all part of the hiring process, and also obviously speak to the character of an individual. And so, those are things that I would, as I listen, those are things that play, a very crucial role, because we're, at least in places like, AAR, we're on commercial airports. We're governed by, CITA requirements to the Department of Transportation from a security perspective. So there's a lot more stringent requirements for us than maybe your local GA airport. But definitely a salary range. And I would just say, I mean, BLS data has the median income at about $65,000 for the technician role. And like I said, it's a great career, and it's a career that's, I always say, we got to do a better job on the technical side. The aviation guys, the pilot guys got it right. I mean, they talk about $310,000 captains. That's what they sell. And we should be selling the six-figure career also, because it is out there. It just, there's a pathway to get there, a little bit different than that of pilots, but it's out there. So I'll turn it over.
I love it. Thank you so much for that. And Sean, same questions to you.
Yeah, just a little bit more to add. Just because there's a dollar sign there, you got to look at past the dollar sign. I mean, a lot of cases, it's the benefits, it's the 401, it's the medical. Look at their long-term plan. If they pay you $20, but you're not going to get a raise for 5 years, you want to start at 18 where you're going to get a buck raised every year. Don't get fixated on that initial start. Look at the whole package. And as Ryan also alluded to, $20 in parts of California won't get you much. $20 and $10 too, Miami's expensive. So just because you see a high dollar figure, you go, man, that's great. Yeah, you get there and you can't afford to live. So you've got to really I get the idea that a big dollar sign is really cool, and that's what you're gunning for. However, you've got to look a little bit deeper than that. You got to look at that company. Is it a new company? Is it a company that's got legs? Duncan's been around forever. AAR has been around forever. Would you want to be with a company that's going to be around forever? So you may want to look at your longevity with a company and where that would end at. Both Duncan and AAR and many others, there's when you go into the interview, yeah, you're looking for that entry level A&P, but ask them, what is the career path in that position? What would it take to you to be the director of maintenance? What would it take to be safety? What would it be to get if you got additional certificates? If you went into avionics and got maybe an AET or an NCAS certificate, where else can you grow within that company? And talk to them and say, if I were to get to a manager level, what would that be? When you go to an interview, it's just not the interview. They're not interviewing you. You also get an opportunity to kind of ask them questions as well and figure out, if I start out here, if I can take a dollar cut here, 19 instead of the 20, but no, in 10 years, 20 years, I'm at six figures. If you're at six figures 10 years earlier than the next guy, man, that's some serious money over the life of your career. Don't look at the 1 year. Look at your whole career path and make a decision.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Sean. Yeah, and that's something I've noticed too, getting into as I've started interviewing at different companies, the benefits package, I start looking more and more at that than I did the actual salary number. So that was a great point to bring up. All right, we're coming up to close to the top of the hour. I'm going to ask one more question, and I just ask our panelists, just keep it quick. And then from there, if there are any other questions, remember, you can reach out to Pete. We can get you guys in touch with any of these panelists or anybody else throughout the rest of this week that that you want to kind of sit down and chat with a lot more. So thanks again to our panelists. And again, real quick question here. From what you've seen, do any companies or a majority of companies or lack thereof provide relocation assistance specifically for these graduates who are about to go into the workforce and you're saying, hey, they might need to move to these cold regions, as you say? Is that something that they can that maybe ask for if it's not provided, or what are you guys seeing that, Sean?
Yeah, you see it in some companies. It's not as at all the locations. I mean, it's going to be based on need. I mean, if they're in an area that is hard to place technicians, then they're obviously going to have to figure out a way to get you there. It could be part of the negotiation as you talk. It's going to be dependent, like for Duncan, if you've got, 85 people for one position, chances are they're probably not going to do relocation unless it's a specialty position.
Gotcha.
If you're a hard to fill location or a hard to fill job, more likely that there's going to be assistance. If you're just an entry level AMP and there's another, few people that are going for it, maybe not so much.
Got it. Ryan, Kendall, kind of same thoughts there,
Yeah,
Ryan?
That's the same thing. And I would say, it's based upon need. And it's something you should ask for, right? I wouldn't, you have not because you ask not. I think there's a saying that goes that way, right? And you should ask. I mean, they could always say no, but it's something that, I know, having been a poor college student before, I know that, sometimes just getting to that first job can be somewhat difficult, and it doesn't always take a lot of money to make the transition. But I would definitely, I would ask, that question. And in the case of AAR, we do provide in most cases.
Yeah, the answer is always no if you don't ask. So,
Yep.
Kendall?
And I would tell you here, if you're more than 100 miles away, we offer relocation. It's part of your recruit. It's part of our package to recruit you. So no matter where you at, unless you're, if you live in Omaha and you're moving to Lincoln, you're 60 miles away, we're not going to relocate you, pay you. But anywhere else, relocation.
Great to hear. Awesome. So
Yeah.
if the company you're applying to maybe doesn't offer it overtly, just might as well go ahead and ask. So, all right. Well, thanks, guys. Again, coming up on the top of the hour here, I really appreciate all the panelists being with us, and especially having everybody else on the call here asking questions and hopefully getting some good information. Remember, reach out to Pete if you guys have more questions or you want to continue to connect in order to keep these conversations going. So with that, I will say thank you again. And Pete, I'll turn it over to you for anything you've got.
Thanks, Greg. You rocked it. You guys were awesome, as I mentioned. This was circled on my calendar, so it's been awesome. So appreciate everything. And if those of you who want to participate in our next workshop, we have one at 1 o'clock Pacific. We meet with an organization called Choose Aerospace, and one of our presenters will be back on with that call. So looking forward to seeing everybody. And again, thanks a lot for all you guys. It's been amazing. So